I was 26 years old the day I understood what a monopoly actually felt like. Not from a textbook, not from a newspaper, from the inside of a room where the decision was being made. My name was Samuel. My father had come from Poland with nothing but a trade skill and a willingness to work. I had grown up in Cleveland, Ohio, the city that by 1870 had become the beating heart of the American oil refining industry. I had taken a job as a junior clerk at a mid-sized refinery on the east side of the city. I recorded shipments. I tracked costs. I filed contracts. I was good with numbers. And numbers, I would learn, were exactly what John D. Rockefeller used to build the most powerful corporate weapon America had ever seen. I was 26 the year Standard Oil decided it was done competing. The year Rockefeller looked at an entire industry and decided, quietly, methodically, without a single public announcement, that he was going to own all of it. And I was in the building when it happened. To understand what Rockefeller did, you first have to understand what the oil industry looked like before he did it. In 1870, American oil was chaos. Pure, unregulated, spectacular chaos. The oil fields of western Pennsylvania had been producing crude since 1859, just 11 years earlier. And in that time, the industry had attracted every kind of man imaginable. Wildcatters who drilled on instinct. Refiners who built processing plants overnight. Speculators who bought and sold leases before the ink was dry. Transporters who charged whatever the market would bear to move crude from the fields to the refineries. Prices swung wildly. A barrel of crude that cost 50 cents one month could cost $4 the next. Refineries opened and collapsed within a single season. Men made fortunes and lost them before they had time to deposit them. It was the kind of market that felt like freedom, but operated like a trap. Because in a market that chaotic, the only people who consistently made money were the ones with the most leverage. And leverage, in the oil business of 1870, meant controlling the railroads. Rockefeller understood this before anyone else did. He was 30 years old, already running the largest refinery in Cleveland, already thinking 3 industries ahead of everyone around him. And he had seen something the wildcatters and the speculators had missed entirely. Oil in the ground was not the asset. Refining was not the asset. The railroad that moved the product, that was the asset. Whoever controlled transportation controlled everything else. I first saw Rockefeller in person in the winter of 1872. He came through our refinery with 2 associates and a small leather notebook. He did not introduce himself. He did not need to. Everyone in Cleveland knew who he was. He walked the floor the way a man walks through a building he already owns, slowly, deliberately. His eyes moving from the equipment to the ledgers to the faces of the workers, missing nothing, saying very little. I was standing at my clerk's desk when he stopped beside me and asked, without looking up from my ledger, what our average cost per barrel was for the previous quarter. I told him. He wrote it in his notebook. He moved on without another word. 3 weeks later, our refinery owner was called to a meeting at Standard Oil's offices on Euclid Avenue. I was asked to accompany him to carry the documents. That was how I ended up in the room. The office itself was not what I expected. I had imagined something grand, high ceilings, mahogany, the visual language of power. Instead it was spare, almost severe. A plain wooden desk, 2 chairs across from it, a single window overlooking the street, no paintings on the wall, no decoration of any kind. Rockefeller was already seated when we arrived. He gestured to the 2 chairs without standing. What followed was not a negotiation. I understood that within the first 5 minutes. A negotiation implies that both parties have something the other wants. What this was a presentation. Rockefeller presented our refinery owner with 2 options, laid out with the calm precision of a man who had prepared both cases weeks in advance. Option 1, sell the refinery to Standard Oil at the assessed valuation. Rockefeller's assessors had already valued it. The number was fair, not generous, but fair. In exchange, the owner could take cash or Standard Oil stock. Rockefeller recommended the stock. Option 2, do not sell. Continue operating independently. But understand that Standard Oil had recently concluded agreements with the Erie Railroad, the New York Central, and the Pennsylvania Railroad, the 3 lines that moved virtually all oil out of the region. Under these agreements, Standard Oil would receive a secret rebate on every barrel it shipped. A significant rebate, enough to allow Standard to undercut any independent refinery on price indefinitely. Furthermore, and Rockefeller said this quietly, almost gently, Standard would also receive a drawback, a payment from the railroad for every barrel shipped by a competitor. Meaning the more our refinery shipped, the more money Standard Oil made from our own business. He let that sit for a moment. Then he said, we call it the South Improvement Company, and it is already operating. Our refinery owner sat very still for a long time. Then he asked how long he had to decide. Rockefeller said 48 hours. I sat in the corner of that room with a folder of documents on my lap and said nothing. But I understood, with the particular clarity that comes from watching a door close in real time, that the American oil industry had just changed forever. Not with a law, not with a war, With a notebook and a railroad contract and 48 hours in in what followed in the months after that meeting, history would call the Cleveland Massacre. In the space of 3 months in early 1872, Rockefeller acquired 22 of the 26 refineries in Cleveland, not by force, by the logic of the situation he had constructed. Every refinery owner faced the same two options we had faced in that spare office on Euclid Avenue. Most of them took the stock, a few took the cash. Almost none of them fought, because fighting meant operating at a loss indefinitely against a competitor who had structurally eliminated your ability to compete. It meant shipping your product on railroads that were secretly paying your competitor every time you did so. It meant watching your customers receive lower prices from Standard than you could ever match, regardless of how efficiently you ran your operation. It wasn't a fair fight. It was never meant to be. That was the point. By 1879, just 7 years after the meeting in that spare office, Standard Oil controlled 90% of all oil refining in the United States. By 1882, Rockefeller reorganized his holdings into the Standard Oil Trust, the legal structure that would become the template for every monopoly that followed. 40 companies, one central board of trustees, one set of decisions made in one room by one man, the most complete corporate control of a single industry in the history of American capitalism. I left the oil industry in 1875. I had watched enough. I had seen what happened to the men who sold. Some of them did well, particularly those who took the stock, which made them wealthy as Standard grew. I had seen what happened to the men who refused. Most of them were gone within 2 years, bankrupt or absorbed. What I carried out of that industry was not bitterness. It was something more precise than that. I had watched a man look at a chaotic, inefficient, wasteful market, and I had watched him conclude that the solution to chaos was not better competition. It was the elimination of competition entirely. And the terrifying thing was that he was not wrong about the chaos. The oil industry before Standard was genuinely destructive. Prices that swung from 50 cents to $4 in a month ruined ordinary people. Refineries that opened and collapsed overnight destroyed working families. The instability was real. Rockefeller looked at that instability and offered a solution. His solution happened to also make him the most powerful private individual in the history of American industry. But the instability was real, and his solution addressed it. That is the thing the history books struggle with. He was not simply a villain. He was a man who saw a problem, engineered a solution, and made sure the solution ran entirely through him.